We just put an offer in on something for $2.5 million prior to offers being due, and we're coming in $150,000 over ask just to have them take it off the market.
Wow.
That's the nature of the beast in Los Angeles right now for the under $3 million play. And then again, the over 30 is booming. 30, 40, 50, 60, $70 million properties trading still, which you would begin to think by virtue of just watching the news every day that couldn't possibly be happening. But I think the rest of Los Angeles between the 5 and 15 million is slow. It's very slow.
One of the things that I discovered relatively quickly after spending time in California was that as big of a state that it is, if you're in the right circles of people, it's pretty damn small. I can't tell you how quickly my different professional and social circles started overlapping, thus elevating my confidence and my comfort in a place that I hadn't previously spent a lot of time. I'm going to give some additional thoughts at the end of the show regarding my move to LA and how it has literally rejuvenated me and pumped energy that I thought I lost back into my life. But first, we're going to focus the main portion of the show on luxury real estate, talking to a woman who was part of these aforementioned overlapping circles with over 22 years of experience. Tracy Tutor is one of the top agents in Beverly Hills. She has an undeniably strong presence and a confidence that has propelled her into the rooms of some of the most powerful people in LA. A native to California, Tracy has lived all over Los Angeles, from Hidden Hills to the Hollywood Hills. Growing up the daughter of Ronald Tutor, one of the most successful civil and building and contractors in the country, Tracy was introduced to real estate at an early age. Shortly after graduating from the University of Southern Cal, and I paused there because I am a Notre Dame person and we don't like each other, but we'll look past that. If I'm going to be an LA person, I got to quit making that joke now, I think, Tracy. But she went to work for her father, acquiring a wealth of knowledge and a steadfast work ethic. After almost 3 years, she then transitioned into a career in residential real estate, and she's never looked back. Many of you probably know her from $1 Million Listing on Bravo. Welcome to 2000% Raise, Tracy.
Hi.
Thanks for being
so good to see you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before we get into the real estate portion, 2000% Raise has a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business following. And in my research, I should have known this. We've known each other now for a little over a year, and I didn't. But in preparation for this show, I came across this. You co-founded a wine company. Could we start there before we get into the stuff everybody wants to hear?
Yeah. I mean, I love wine, so that's where that began. But I have two partners, actually, who are Swedish. One of them is the sister-in-law of my co-star, Fredrik Eklund, who I was on the show with this last season. We were introduced by Fredrik, and they came to me with her partner, Lisa Agerman, and sat me down and said, hey, we have this idea for, this wine. And they pitched me in my backyard. And I said, okay, well, the pitch could use a little bit of work, but I think the idea is really great. And what I liked about it was that the wine was easy to drink, affordable, accessible to everybody, but more importantly, for wine drinkers out there, low in sugar.
Okay.
And almost zero sugar. So, as that's like one of the first of its kind. There's tons of organic wines out there and wines that are focused on being vegan and cruelty-free and lower in sugar, et cetera. Very, very, very few have zero sugar. And so that sort of resonated with me, particularly in like the health and wellness space right now. Things have sort of taken off in the last 10 years. And, I don't believe in sort of wiping your entire existence and just living in a box like that. And so I felt like this was a really great way for someone who actually enjoys wine to make it more accessible to them at a price point that they could afford without also putting a bunch of unnecessary added sugar. in your body that is just not needed. If I'm going to eat sugar, I want to eat it and I
Yep.
want to enjoy the fact that it's a chocolate or a
Yep.
gummy or whatever it is at
Yep.
the movie theater. But, you don't realize how much sugar is in wine. So that was it. I was hooked. And over the course of, going, the end of COVID is when we were attempting to launch, things got backed up, but the wine is now launched. We have 4 varietals. We've got a Cabernet. We've got another red that is more of a Shiraz blend that just came out, which is really good. A Pinot Grigio, and then more recently the Chenin Blanc, which is like a crispy white, which is my favorite because I like white wine.
Awesome.
And all of the bottles range from about $13 to $15, and you can find it online at unsweetwine.com. And we're looking to build like the online business first, and then hopefully put ourselves in some larger retail, and do some brand partnerships. But we're very, very early stages, and so it's an exciting time for the brand, for the wine. And of course, I think in the next year, our goal is to, build a business and hopefully sell it.
Well, it sounds like you're not just using your celebrity and slapping your name on something. It sounds like this is something that's up your alley. You've been an advocate for, health and wellness and everything you just spoke.
And also drinking.
Also drinking. It is a little counterintuitive though. If you look at if you look at your real estate clients, Tracy, I think they could afford more than the $13 bottle. Am I right there at least?
Yes, that is probably true. But, I don't like sort of the snobbiness that's associated with the wine industry. I don't like the inaccessibility or the elitist attitude that surrounds that industry. And I think it's just years and years of sort of people being uneducated about it. And I think if we make wine more accessible, it's better for their industry as well. So let's disrupt it a little bit and get in there and shake things up and make it a lot less complicated and make it affordable.
I think a lot of people know you from $1 Million Listing, at least at a national level. Tell us a little bit about what Bravo lets you do. Are you allowed to go out and say, "Look at me, I'm Tracy Tutor with Bravo's $1 Million Listing," and put it on your business cards? Have you subtly used it to get clients, or do you even need to? Because you were successful, I'm assuming, far way before that show came on.
I mean, yeah, I had been. By the time I started the show, I was 17 years into my career.
Okay.
We're 23 years in now. I love Bravo. I love the Bravo family. I love how supportive they've been of our careers, both on and off the show. Obviously I have a real estate business, and as much as it is a reality show, it's occupational. And so it's a little bit different from some of the other reality shows that Bravo produces. And they've been incredibly supportive. I mean, I don't carry business cards around. I don't wear a hat that says $1 Million Listing, but, obviously the show has been on the air for a very long time, and we're lucky enough to be able to associate our business with $1 Million Listing as a brand, because I think it's probably the most respected, maybe not the most watched, but real estate show on television. We've been on the air for 14 years, and I'm lucky to be the first woman to become a part of the show in season 10.
Awesome. And I'm going to tell you what, let's stay on that for a second here. And okay, so Tracy, since I've been coming out to LA over the last few years, I've taken some pictures with some pretty cool people. I put one up on my personal Facebook page of like maybe me and Zac Efron, or me and Aaron Rodgers, or Kevin Garnett, all people I've come associated with. I got more street credit on Facebook for my picture with you than any of those people. You are like all my friends' wives in suburban Chicago. You're like, holy shit, Tracy Tutor. Like they didn't give a shit about anybody else. It was that one. So
that's cute.
Yeah, hats off to you. But let's talk about that though. Other reality TV shows, sometimes there's almost a stigma against the cast members. I know.
I mean, I think it's a part. Yeah. I think, for so many years, and we have the Kardashians, I think, to thank for this, that for so many years, it wasn't really an accepted or comfortable avenue for us to promote ourselves. It was, 15 years ago, reality television was like a hard no. And I had tested for a few different reality shows when I was in my 20s. And I would just remember being like, this could crush my career.
Yep.
I mean, that was the mindset back then.
Yep.
And, it's not like, this is real estate. It's not brain surgery. So the fact that like back in my 20s, 20 years ago, I had that mindset and how much it shifted is, we have the Kardashians to thank for that. They put themselves out there before it was popular to put themselves out there, and America fell in love with it, like good, bad, and ugly. And I think it kind of opened up the doors for a lot of people to come in and do things a little bit differently. So yes, I think there is still a little bit of a stigma for some people
Yep.
About these shows. But most of the people that actually know our show, like really know our show versus, oh, you're on a real estate show, that's a reality show.
Yep.
They might have a similar opinion, but the people that actually watch the show know that our focus really is truly is the real estate. And yes, we have a really damn good time doing it. But we're lucky enough to be a part of a show that I think is actually well respected amongst people across the board. There's no way that these developers selling $20+ million houses or private equity guys with their private wives selling their $20 million homes over and over and over again for 14 years would do that or put themselves in that position if they didn't feel like the show was respected enough, to be a part of it. Which, there are other shows that do it a little bit differently. And some of those shows are more focused on the social aspect of working in our business, which is also incredibly entertaining. I think our show is a little bit of both.
Yeah. I really think that the real estate shows in general, from a reality standpoint, are just taken a lot more seriously. Yours especially, but really all of them. I mean, I remember being at the Mastros in Orange County, the one next to Javier's, whatever that one is, and my daughter was a teenager, and she recognized a couple women from that one of the other shows, not your show, one of the other shows, and goes up to them. They're taking pictures and all this stuff with them. And I gotta think, you living in LA, all right, there's celebrities everywhere out on the scene and stuff, and you've been a successful business person. You come from a background of successful people, so you're part of that fabric of LA business. And now you're on TV, and my guess is that you're treated almost like a celebrity when people bump into you. Is that the case?
I don't think anyone gives a shit in LA.
Okay. You know what? That's true. That's why I specified my Chicago suburban friends' wives, not the LA people. That's funny.
I mean, we have incredible fans all over the world. And we've got fans in Australia, in Canada, in England. I mean, people go out, Belgium. People go out of their way to find the show and watch it. And some are a year behind in certain countries. So we love our fans. I think LA is obviously is Hollywood, right? It's the center of entertainment. I'm like, hey, paparazzi, it's me. They're like, who? No one cares. But God will, if I'm in an airport, I've had like fans come up to you. I had a girl come up to me when we had gotten off a boat at a port in Turkey this summer. And I had posted that I was in this area location wise. This girl ran up to me when I was in the port. She goes, I just jumped out of my cab and I had to come and meet you. Like, I'm your biggest fan. And she was like from Belgium.
Okay.
And it was so cute. She's like, I knew you were. And I just thought it was so sweet. And I'm so grateful that like people resonate with our show still 14 years later. I mean, that's nuts. Most of these shows have a expiration date. It gets old after a while. And the fact that we're still on the air speaks to just the charisma, like amongst the cast members on the show, and obviously the real estate. People still want to see the real estate.
Yeah. Let's talk about real estate investing, Tracy. And I'm thinking that you don't have a lot of house flippers looking for that $12 million property to turn around and sell it for $14 million, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are people that are playing that game. Could you tell us a little bit about what your experience is and what you're just seeing from an investment standpoint in the higher end stuff, at least?
I mean, right now the market is it's a little uneasy. I mean, obviously the media has a large part to do with that, but there's a lot happening, right? Since COVID, the recovery from the pandemic has been, I think, really, really good for real estate and investors. Now we're starting to see interest rates go up. Again, I want to remind everybody who thinks like the world is crashing because interest rates go up. The fact is, interest rates were so historically low for so long, and people didn't want to buy property because property value was up by 20 to 30% in certain markets. They didn't want to buy it because they didn't want to overpay for a property, but they were getting 2.75% interest
Yeah.
for, a 10-year fixed.
Yeah.
So now we're sort of moving into a more realistic interest rates that are floating around 4 to 5.5%, which still is historically low. When I got into the business, I remember my stepdad came to me and said, "We want to refinance the house." And I was doing mortgages at the time. This is in my early 20s. And
Mhm.
he's like, "Let me know when it drops below 7%." And I was like, "That's
Yeah.
never going to happen."
Right.
Like
Yep.
and then all of a sudden it did.
Yeah.
So I think with interest rates rising the way that they are and the stock market obviously going through some volatility, I think the end of this year and going into 2023, we'll see a little bit of a shift in, I think, the overall prices kind of losing steam a little bit, but it's more of an evening out. And I think what that's going to do with interest rates is create a more of an even market where it's not just a seller's market anymore with no inventory and prices soaring, but buyers are no longer having to compete at the level where they've got 17 other buyers on a $10 million property. I mean, those prices are absurd. The low end under 2.5 to 3 million is still going in multiples and moving quickly.
Okay.
We just put an offer in on something for 2.5 million
Mhm.
prior to offers being due, and we're coming in $150,000 over ask just to have them
Wow.
take it off the market.
Wow.
That's the nature of the beast in Los Angeles right now for the under $3 million play. And then again, the over 30 is booming. 30, 40, 50, 60, $70 million properties trading still, which you would begin to think by virtue of just watching the news every day that couldn't possibly be happening. But I think the rest of the world in not the rest of the world, the rest of Los Angeles between the 5 and 15 million is slow. It's
Okay.
very slow.
Interesting. Could you comment a little bit on that luxury market, Tracy? Okay, once you get way up there, right? All our listeners are not just in California. Okay, so when you start talking about 10, 15, 20 million dollars, these are markets that don't necessarily even exist in their geography. Are the
Mm.
dynamics of the purchases the same? In the sense of, all right, this guy has 30 million. He's going to put 20% down. He needs to go get approved for a mortgage. The buyer is going to want to see the pre-approval letter. How does that world work versus
No.
okay, not at all.
So the ultra high end generally are cash deals. Most of these guys that are buying at that level will finance it because it makes sense to.
Yep.
But they're going to pay cash and then they're going to figure out how to lend on it properly for them that works later. But
Yeah.
you're not putting 20% down in a $60 million house and having an appraisal contingency. It's just not the
Okay.
way it works.
Okay.
So generally speaking, in that world, they're writing cash and then they're dealing with the financing piece, later.
Is there even appraisals at all? Because I feel like what are the comps? What do you even look at once you get to that market?
Of course, again, we've got an offer on something right now. It's cash. It's an international client, north of 30 million.
Yep.
And, you know, they'll sort out that piece later. And
Yeah.
oftentimes they'll do it prior to the close of escrow. They could have their lender sorted out prior to close. And yes, there will be an appraisal involved. But remember, we are in a little bit of a bubble in Los Angeles where there are actually multiple homes north of $30 million and $40 million. And,
Yeah.
there's something in Malibu right now for $225 million.
Yeah.
So that's not a huge representation. It's, but call it 20% of our market.
Got it. Real estate's one of those professions, Tracy, that it's kind of like insurance. I was in insurance. All right. Now that could mean a lot of things. All right, John, you were in insurance. What were you doing in insurance? Okay. You're in real estate. The level of entry, the barrier of entry to get into these spaces just requires a real estate license or an insurance license. And obviously within that, people are different, varying levels of success. Have you come across anybody where you've been just kind of scratching your head like, oh my God, is this guy like someone's cousin or something? How the hell did he get the $20 million listing?
I think a lot of people assume that the entrance to this career it's relatively easy, and it is. Being successful is a whole nother,
Boom. Yep.
is a whole nother area, because the God's honest truth is the test is not that difficult. You could graduate from high school and take the test and become a real estate agent tomorrow. The question is, are you going to be doing business at the level that we're doing business at? And how long is it going to take you to get there? And I think that's what people don't realize about our industry is that, people are like, well, it's like I can kind of like do it like on my own hours and my own time. And I can assure you, if that is your MO, don't bother, because this is by far no way and no less than a 60-hour a week situation.
Yep.
You are on call 24/7. You will have to step out of games for your kids. You will have to not show up to certain dance recitals, things of that nature, because that is how our business is played. I mean, remember, the people that you're dealing with, this is the greatest asset that they own. More often than not, someone's home that's it for them. So that's their highest priority. When you're like, you know what, let me get back to you. I'm at a soccer game, or I've got to pick my kids up, or I've got to do A, B, and C, or I'm making dinner right now. They're like, you know what, I'm going to call agent number 2.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is like the biggest misconception about what we do. To be successful at it, you're going to work your ass off.
Yep.
And still might not get there.
Yeah. And what do you feel about the other end of that spectrum where the agent gets so ambitious? I hear a lot of talk about agents doing this. And to me, I just don't think the math makes any sense. But where they want to start their own brokerage, bring other agents under that.
I mean,
yeah,
there are certain people that have that gift. I am not one of them.
Okay.
I do not want to run my own brokerage. I do not want to be responsible for herding cats.
Yep.
Again, because of the nature of our business, I have so much respect for the people that have opened successful brokerages and done really well, because can you imagine running around dealing with a bunch of me, like 8,000 of me, but maybe not as successful?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work. I mean, real estate agents, there's no hours. There's not, it's not a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
They're all over the place. And it can be incredibly difficult. And don't forget, the E&O and the insurance aspect of, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in errors and omissions insurances to make sure that these dumb agents don't screw it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking too that, there has to be a value proposition, right? How are you going to get agents to come work for your brokerage versus somebody else's? And you all have to be competitive with the cut that you're giving your agents under you, right? So I don't know. I just see it as, you definitely have to be the right person to want to deal with that, because you're going to bring in new agents who might not sell anything, spend a lot of time training them. And anyway, we already mentioned that your team helped me with a purchase in West Hollywood. I had come from Chicago, and my place in West Hollywood is a second home, but I wanted a full amenity building in LA. I had started off looking in Beverly Hills. Found that there's not a ton of high-rise living like I was used to in Chicago. My story is I was in Chicago forever. I moved out to the suburbs, still have my place in the city, but I also wanted a place in LA. In Chicago, luxury high-rise, the Trump Tower, but there's a bunch of luxury high-rises in Chicago. I get out to LA, full amenity, luxury high-rises are just not abundant at all, Tracy. Could you comment on that a little bit?
I mean, LA is a very different city. I mean, it's very spread out. There's a ton of suburbs. I mean, this city was not meant to be New York, Miami, or Chicago for that matter.
Yeah.
Really and truly, only in the last 5 to 7 years have hotel brands finally come to Los Angeles and said, wow, LA is really you know, changed what's happening in terms of being more of an international city, which is
Sure.
so interesting to me,
Yep.
that it took this long. More restaurants have come to LA. Bigger brands have come to LA, and obviously the Four Seasons, Mandarin Oriental, the Edition residences, which I was lucky enough to be a part of,
Awesome.
the Pendry as well. And all of those hotel brands have begun opening up residential high rise living, which has done pretty well up until COVID. And then obviously it's taken a little bit of a dip. I think LA is a very young city when it becomes about high rise living. I think this is something that's going to just take another 20 years before we see a little bit more of that. I think the beauty of LA is we have such a temperate climate. And because of that, people want to be outdoors. They'd
Okay.
rather have a 2,000 square foot house
Yep.
with a big backyard
Mm.
than be on the 30th floor in a full service building.
Right. Right. That makes sense. And, that's interesting what you just said. Congratulations by you. Are you, I don't know if you're exclusive, but I know you sell a lot of the properties at the Edition. Before I bought in LA, I would stay either at Beverly Hills Hotel or the Edition. And what an awesome, awesome building.
Yeah, it was really fun to be a part of that. It was my first real high rise from a branded high level. John Pawson as the architect, Whitcock out of New York as the developer. And just to be able to sell something that was so fresh and new to LA at the time was a real treat. Like, doing that kind of business is a whole different animal for us in LA. That's something that obviously New York brokers are accustomed to.
Yep.
Probably Chicago as well. Very different here.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I had a lot of fun representing it. Obviously, we sold out about year and a half ago,
Okay.
100% sold out. And
Right.
so now the resales are beginning to happen, but it's a little slower.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, I got a call yesterday from about the Four Seasons penthouse that was, I think, traditionally or originally listed at 70 million, not built out. And now, there's some deals to be made. So you're essentially buying a shell and building it yourself for 50 million. I mean,
Yep.
that's a big, what you can get for 50 million in LA?
Yeah,
There's
quite a
like
bit.
an estate in Holmby Hills for on like 4 acres. Like,
Yep.
why would you buy that's what I think the LA mentality is. It starts to become, why would you buy an apartment with
Mhm.
a balcony? I don't care how big it is,
Yeah.
when you can own a house in the hills for the same price with a backyard and a pool.
Yeah.
And I think what it boils down to is, for people that are coming from Chicago or New
Yeah.
York or Hong Kong, international buyers that are comfortable and don't want the responsibility of a house. That's our buyer profile for the high rise properties for the most part.
Well, and for me, it made sense for a second home. For if it was my primary residence, it really would not make any sense. Orange County versus LA. I didn't even know that was a thing. I think for non-Californians as well, we all think of like Newport Beach or Laguna Beach or Malibu or Santa Monica, kind of all the same, and they're very, very, very different, as I found.
I love Newport. I
Okay.
love Orange County. I'll be down there on Sunday watching my daughter ride. It's a little bit of a different lifestyle. I think arguably Newport Beach is maybe the most like LA.
Okay.
But that's a stretch.
Okay.
Because I like to refer to like that part of Orange County. It's like the red state.
Yep.
Everybody's like, I remember when we were all on lockdown and no one was leaving their houses, and like you just go down to Newport Beach and Mastro's was open and everybody was like, no mask here, like it's just a little bit of a different lifestyle down there, but I actually like it. I prefer like Orange County and Newport Beach during the day. I don't particularly care for the nightlife down there. It's a little bit different. Maybe not as sophisticated, if that's the right word. I don't know, as Los Angeles in terms of like what they have to offer and things of that nature. But what makes Newport so great is the beach and the daytime living and the bay and the boats. And that
Yeah.
whole vibe is what I think people, of course, are drawn to.
Yeah.
And there's just better beaches than Malibu.
Yeah. You definitely feel immediately the whole boating lifestyle when you go down there. And I know,
100%.
yeah. And if you look at, I think the whole red state concept, it definitely comes into play too. What's the craziest listing you ever had, Tracy? Was it one on the show, or you got another story outside of that?
I mean, crazy, like crazy people. Or, I mean, I've had so many crazy people. And I had one on the show that it was a portfolio about what he called $500 million in real estate in Malibu. I think it's probably closer to about 300 million. Either way, it's quite a bit of real estate. And he was on the show with me, and that he was big. He was the worst,
Okay.
like complete masochist, like just treated people horribly. Like, it got to the point where we had to really axe a lot of what his participation was on the show because, he sounded horrible.
That bad.
And we all ultimately ended up parting ways. But I mean, you name it. I've represented like crazy celebrities. I represented completely normal people. Like I had a listing last year, this darling couple, blonde, cute wife. She's like 33, pregnant with her second. And he was like an actor turned producer. Well, that actor turned producer, while we were under contract to sell their property for like, I think it was 6 million. I don't remember the exact price. All of a sudden the FBI was at the door and he was arrested for like the second largest Ponzi scheme.
That's good.
And we were like, what? And the FBI was like on the phone with us, and we were like, well, do we still get to sell the house?
Yeah.
Like, if he owes this many people money, shouldn't we like close this for them?
Yep.
The wife had no idea. We're still in touch with her, but like it was an awful experience. Awful, awful, awful. But
Wow.
I mean, I'm just going about my day doing inspections on the property, and like, the FBI like runs into the house and like takes everything. And we were just like, just when we think shit can't get any weirder. Like, like, who does that happen to?
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. That is crazy. I gotta say, I like your comment. You didn't like the guy, and you said he had $500 million, and because you didn't like him, you wanted to correct that. It's more like 300 million.
It's actually more like 300.
That's bullshit. If you liked him, you would have just left it at $500 million. Any parts of California, we'll wrap up here in a second, Tracy, but any parts of California that you feel are undervalued for any of our investor types out there, or anyone really looking to relocate?
There's not a lot of affordable housing in Los Angeles, and that's primarily because it's not affordable to live in Los Angeles.
Right.
But I think, we're like LA is just getting bigger and bigger. And so I think buying on the outskirts, there was a lot of areas surrounding USC about 10 years ago that were getting built up. And had you bought there 10 years ago when no one really thought, anything was going to happen with that area, you would be very rich today. So those properties have tripled in value. So I always say, like, focus on the areas where the infrastructure is being improved and built, because we're out of space in central Los Angeles. So it's urban sprawl at its finest. And you want to get in on those parts. And then they're long-term holds. You can't expect to have a return on those properties for quite some time. But the key is, generational wealth. So buy in those areas, hold those properties, and hold them until you retire, and then look at what they're worth. My dad bought a warehouse in 1985. It's so far, but it's a huge, huge warehouse and it was for all of his equipment. He gets offers on that on the daily for $70 million. I think he paid $500,000 for it.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. And one of the things that I noticed really quickly, and anybody new to California will notice it almost immediately as well. There's more money in California. Like I don't care how much money you have. There's people in California with more money than you. So if you're trying to like,
or they're just John, they're just all full of shit, driving Bentleys and living in apartments. You'll never know.
See, that's the other half, Tracy.
There is a lot more wealth in other cities in this country than there is in LA. And this town, as you know, is a visual masterpiece. And at the end of the day, like how many people actually have the dough
Yep. Yep.
is remains to be seen.
And the ones that do might be getting arrested by the FBI during, close-ins.
Right. Or shit, who knew?
I'm going to tell you what, though, Tracy, on what you just said, it's so accurate because when I came out to LA, I was able to make friends relatively quickly with some things, and I'm in venture capital. And I was kind of surprised by how, quickly these circles started becoming bigger for me. And someone put it in perspective for me. They said, because everyone in LA is full of shit and you're not full of shit. That's why this is happening for you.
I have a pretty good bullshit meter.
Yeah.
So like I walk into a room and I've walked in with some of my team members or had calls with potential clients.
Yeah.
And you get to the point where you're like, I've been doing this too long. I've been on the phone with this person for 3 minutes and I know he's absolutely a fraud.
Really?
But it takes a minute, you gotta go through the, being wrong 10,000 times. And then finally you're like, okay, got it.
Don't you wonder in that situation sometimes, what's this person's end game? Like, dude, you're like, you just want to look at houses. There's no, like, are you just trying to be relevant? There's no reason for us to be wasting our time on, maybe for you, if someone wants an Instagram picture with you, I don't know, but like are people just lying to lie? Sometimes it's head scratching.
I mean, I think some people, I've dealt with a lot of crazies over the years, but I think some people want to get you in the car and spend time with you. And then I think some people actually believe that they can do this. And like they've created a whole story. And they believe their own lies. So, I mean, I've written offers on properties for people that have not a dollar to their name. And it took me like years to kind of finally go, okay, wait a minute. This guy is completely full of shit.
Yeah.
I see fake proof of funds all the time. Okay. I see letters from financial advisors that aren't in fact letters, like where there's no telephone number. It says 888-888-888. You're like, really? That's your JP Morgan. That's your JP Morgan guy. Yeah. Like,
That's funny. I'll get that in the venture capital space sometimes with founders where I look at their business plans and dude, can you do math? Like if you add up these numbers, they don't this is not a business. So it's funny. Well, hey, I ask all of our guests. I'm trying to ask all of our guests. I forget about 40% of the time is my average right now. But please leave our audience. It doesn't have to be business. Doesn't have to be real estate related. But give us a movie recommendation. Tracy Tutor recommends what movie?
Oh God, I haven't been to the movies in a long time. How about a TV show?
Okay, we'll make the exception for you.
Yeah, well, it's like everything's on Netflix now. It's probably true. Right now, I'm obsessed with Old Man. I don't know if you guys like Jeff Bridges, but holy shit, it is so good.
Okay.
I'm also watching the new Game of Thrones. With the drag, it's called House of Dragons, I think.
Okay,
dude.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So good.
Old
so
Man
good.
And the new Game of Thrones. Not $1 million listing, not selling on Sunset. The two she just said, okay?
No.
Yeah.
No. Actually, I did watch Selling OC.
Oh, yeah?
I watched the first couple episodes. Oh, yeah.
Nice. Well, Tracy, please hang on for 1 second, and we will be right back. What a great guest Tracy was. I really love her making the time for me to be on the show. Luckily for me, she was on my side of the table, and you already heard that I made some quick money on that deal. Not selling the place though, so I guess it's only on paper at the moment. I want to end the show with an explanation of what got me to buying a second home in LA in the first place. This is going to be a little different than what we had been discussing previously. In 2015, I sold my insurance company into private equity. Part of the deal was that I needed to work there for 5 years. Not surprisingly, by the tail end of that employment contract, I was more or less feeling like dead man walking. For the first time in my life, I was not excited about getting out of bed in the morning. I had all the money from my deal already in the bank, but I still had this obligation that needed to be fulfilled contractually. Office politics that I was right in the middle of didn't help my level of excitement. And quite frankly, it was just time to go toward that final year or so. This feeling, I am sure, was mutual, but everyone had their hands tied because we all signed the same damn employment contract. Anyway, I say all this because I was drained. Never in my life did I not enjoy going to work. This sucked. I finally retired in December of 2019, but that didn't last long. I quickly figured out that 42 years old to never work again is not great long-term planning from an emotional perspective, regardless of how much money I had. I decided to start something new and founded Glencrest Global. This is my venture capital firm. You heard me and Tracy talk a little bit about this. This led me to evaluating deals regularly in California and had me spending a lot of time out there. A few circles started colliding relatively quickly for me in LA. I was business partners with Aaron Rodgers right off the bat, and his very well-connected co-founder became one of my closer friends. This immediately made me pretty visible, both professionally and socially. Outside of that, I became involved with a cannabis company that Jaleel White founded, and a number of other interesting endeavors that sometimes included other high-profile founders. I quickly discovered, as big as California is, it's very damn small, which Tracy and I spoke about earlier. Case in point, that's how I know Tracy in the damn first place. In Chicago, I felt like I saturated the existing opportunities and had limited future growth potential. But in LA, I felt how I felt when I first moved into Chicago back in 2006, when I bought that duplex in Old Town. Oh man, those summers. Everything was new. I was meeting new people, experiencing new things. I discovered a pep in my motherfucking step that I had not felt since I sold my company back in 2015. It was the move I needed to rejuvenate myself. I'm aware that not everyone is in a position to just get up and buy a second home to give their lives a needed change. But I encourage you to change something if you are finding yourself in a mundane rut. I didn't know what the solution was, but I knew something needed to change. I kept my head on a swivel and found an outlet to get me back on my horse. I want to thank Tracy Tutor for joining us today, and I want to thank the audience for listening to another episode of 2000% Raise. And that wraps up another episode of 2000% Raise. Thank you for listening. The best way to support our show is by leaving a rating or review on all platforms you listened on. And of course, by following, liking, or subscribing. Visit us at 2000percentraise.com or at John Cerasani on TikTok and Instagram. And of course, my YouTube channel at John Cerasani's 2000% Raise. Find all the ways to follow today's guests in our show notes. Thank you for being a part of our entrepreneurial journey.